All right, guys, today we're going to talk about the semicircle, talking about having healthy patterns, repeatable patterns. If you've got a Bible, you can find this in Genesis 1 is what we're going to start with. We're going to do Genesis 1 and we're going to do John 15. So Genesis 1, you don't have to turn there, but this is the way it goes. It always says the same thing. There's this phrase that gets repeated again and again and again. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking it was good. That does get repeated, but that's not the phrase I'm thinking of. In verse 3, it says, God called the light day, the dark night, and there was evening and morning the first day. And in verse 6, it says, God called the vault sky, there was evening and morning the second day. And it goes all the way through. It says there's evening and morning, there's evening and morning, there's evening and morning. And it's easy for us just to pass right on by that and not notice it. But there's actually something profound that's going on there that it's easy for us to miss. It's when we talk, if you ask me, well, tell me about your day, I'd say, well, I had morning and then I had evening. But the way that God set up the world, it always says there's evening and then there's morning. So the Hebrew day starts not at sunrise, but at sundown. So the day starts with when the sun goes down. What do? The very first thing you do is you rest. Before anything else, right? Before you go do the work, you rest. So most of us, see, we work. This is how we function, right? We're living for the weekend. But the system that we see in Genesis and what became the Hebrew day, it was like this. We would rest in order to work. Now, at some level, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, if you got this, rest and work, then at some level it's always feeding into each other. And that's right, you're not wrong about that. But there is kind of a fundamental difference between when I work to rest, then I'm always feeling depleted, right? And I'm always down, and then when I rest, I catch back up. When I rest to work, it's like I'm getting ahead, and then I start to get back down to the level, and then I rest again to get ahead. So it's kind of a different thing. Most of us go through, I don't know how you are, but for me, a lot of times I go through life feeling like I need to recuperate, not, oh, I need to get ahead again. So you see this again when you look at John 15. So John 15 is Jesus' kind of final words to his disciples, and he has this thing that he says that's super depressing, at least for me. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. And you go, well, that sounds nice, but when you think about it, you realize what he says is, if you don't bear fruit, I'm going to cut you. And if you do bear fruit, I'm going to cut you. Like either way, the good gardener is pruning back all the time. And this is the same thing, this is the way it is with us, that we go through seasons of pruning and seasons of fruitfulness. And so this is really this normal thing where sometimes we're fruitful and sometimes we just have to abide or remain. He says, remain in me, remain in me. Now, my dad, when I was just born, my dad almost quit his job to go buy a apple orchard from a friend. And his buddy he had this whole system where every year he would go out and he'd go to half the trees in his lot, and he would pinch off all the apple blossoms so that they wouldn't bear fruit that year. And the other ones he would let grow. And he got so much more fruit this way. And then the next year he would pinch the blossoms off the other trees, right? And so every year, every tree had a year where it would bear and then a tree where it would rest. It's the same idea of rotating your crops or something like that. And so what he discovered is that he got more than twice as much fruit by doing it that way. If apple tree can bear every year, it works fine. But if you give it seasons of rest and seasons of fruitfulness, you get more than twice as much. Does that make sense? So here's where I am most of the time. Right? Most of the time for me, I never think of it like a pendulum, right? That's going to swing back and forth. right? It just swings this way and then it swings back. I spend a lot of time halfway between fruitfulness and abiding. This is not a good thing, right? The natural rhythm is like the pendulum swings over here. So you spend time abiding and then it swings over here. You spend time being fruitful. There's this tick-tock thing that's going on. But a lot of times when I'm not really fruitful, what I see is that it's because I haven't really spent the time to abide, right? I'm kind of stuck in the middle. I'm halfway between fruitfulness and abiding. And I mean, I don't know who's watching this thing, but this could be you too. Right? I feel like, man, I just don't ever really reach the fruitfulness that I want to reach, but that's because I'm tired, because I haven't spent the time to abide. And so there's this pattern in our lives of rest and fruit that really needs to be built in, not just to our sleep schedules, right? But this is a spiritual pattern as well. And it's not just a daily pattern, but it's a anything pattern. So if you look at your day, you need times of abiding and times of fruitfulness. But also if you look at your week, you need times of abiding, you need times of fruitfulness. If you look at your month, right, you need to set up, how can I have times in my month when I'm abiding and times when I'm fruitful? If you look at your year, you'll probably have years. You'll have parts in your year where like, man, during this part of the year, I'm just really killing it. And then other parts of the year, I'm kind of recuperating, or I'm preparing, not just recuperating, right? We're trying to get ahead. I'm preparing for the work that's to come. And so I find that when I am unfruitful, usually it's because I'm stuck on this pendulum. The tick-tock of rest versus work is not ticking or talking. And so, so I'd encourage you to think about the semicircle here and just figure out what does it look like, not how do I be more fruitful. You probably need to think, what do I need to build in over on this side to abide more fully, to rest and recharge, rejuvenate, and prepare for what comes over here. One of the things that I see consistently is that people confuse amusement and recreation. It's all in the word, right? Amuse. A means not, right? Atheist is not a theist. Amuse. Muse means to think. If you muse about something, you're thinking about something. Amuse means to not think. I go home, I flip on something, and I just sit there and not think. You probably need some of that in your life, but you probably don't need as much as you think you do. Part of what you need is times when in your life when you are recreating who you are, right? You need recreation. You need to recreate. So there are things that you do. They might even be work, right? Or they might be activity. But there are things that you do that recreate you, right? So when we are abiding, it's not just I'm going to sit around doing nothing and then, I spend the weekend at home watching TV and then I feel like I don't feel ready to attack the next week. It's because we've spent too much time on amusement and not enough time on recreation. So figure out what things are recreational for you, what things actually recreate you, and you need to load this up over here in order to be fruitful, all right? So we rest to work, we don't work to rest. So that's it. That's the semicircle. Glad you guys got a chance to go through that again. Watch it as many times as you need to. I'll see you next time.